Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to check out the Solo Magicka Sorcerer build that I recently showcased in the Red Petal Bastion dungeon. Basically what you see here. The build can be found on alcasthq.com. I will put the link into the description. Make sure to check it out. On the website you can find beginner and advanced gear setups, skills, champion points, what kind of like Blackwood, Mundus stone. It's basically all here. Resource management, rotation, what bad habits you should try to avoid, and so on. A lot of gameplay videos as well. For example, Wattish Run Hollows, Veteran Run. I even soloed Cradle of Shadows on Veteran with hard mode with this setup, so the build is very battle tested. Make sure to go check it out. In the gameplay videos, I usually also explain why I do what, so that might be helpful for some folks as well. Please don't forget to subscribe. Let's take a look at the stats. 35k max Magicka. Very good. Almost 25k max health. I usually recommend being above 20k to avoid a lot of one-shots, but 25k is even better. Mostly because Sorc has a passive that boosts our health, because we have a pet active, more than that later. 18k max stem, that is a lot, but on solo builds you need this. You need to block a lot and you need to dodge roll a lot more. Because you don't have a tank to absorb damage, or that like taunts mobs. Because you play solo, you have to do that all on your own. This is mostly important when you're trying to do more difficult content though. On the website you will also find the stats, always unbuffed and buffed. Fully buffed, you can see we almost have 5k spell damage and almost 60% spell crit. A lot of spell penetration and spell resistance. Very, very good. In terms of Mundus stone, we do use the lever, which gives a lot of spell penetration. It boosts our damage the most. For a solo build, the lever is always the best option. If you want to learn more about Mundus stones, on ESO-hub.com, I also put the link in the description. You actually can find all the Mundus stones with what they do and where you can find them. Very useful page as well. Buff food. I do use longfin pasty with melon sauce. This can be bought in the guild stores for a cheap price. It boosts max health, max magic and max stamina by a buttload. That's basically how I do get all these juicy stats here. Potions. So I do have an expensive and an inexpensive solution. The expensive solution would be Essence of Spell Crit. These give Major Prophecy, so you get 10% more spell critical. And then it also restores health, which could be nice when you drop low. And they also give a lot of Magicka back, almost 8k. And Major Intellect, which increases Magicka recovery by 30%, very important. However, if you're broke or you don't want to spend a lot of money, you can always use the inexpensive Essence of Magicka potion. You can buy them in the guild stores. They also drop from monsters. They're very inexpensive. The expensive potions are only really needed in harder content, right? You don't, like, for if you want to solo dungeons or something like that. For overland or public dungeons, like, the normal pots are more than enough. In terms of race, I do prefer a high elf. However, all Magicka based races are fine, right? The reason why I do like high elf is it gives me 258 spell damage, 2k max Magicka, and it also increases my sustain a little bit. On the website I basically list up as well Breton, Dark Elf, Argonian, Khajiit, or even Orc. Like Orc, it's kind of weird, but they actually gave Orc 258 spell damage like a patch ago, so even Orc could be used on Magicka based bases or setups. But yeah, anyway, a little bit weird, but it is what it is. Sets. This here is the tier 1 setup. I do have a tier 2 and a beginner setup on the website as well. on all my solo builds, False God. This is like a must-have set. Drops in Sunspire. You don't need the perfect version. The normal version is more than enough. It's very easy to get. What does this set do? So when we compare perfect versus imperfect, the only difference is the perfect version has 129 more spell damage. That's maybe like 2% more damage. Doesn't matter that much. But like the imperfect and the perfect version both have 2 spell crit bonuses. They have minor slayer and they have the 5-piece bonus, which reduces your magic ability cost by 8%. That's a lot. And when you kill an enemy, you gain 2450 for Magicka, and you also gain speed buff. So this set is just really powerful for solo setups. Just in general, like you can use this anywhere. The second set is Mother Sorrow. I do love crit. This gives me a buttload of crit. Obviously, you could also run Medusa if you want, but I usually prefer Mother. Very powerful. The third set, Swarm Mother, just the one piece, because we do get max stem and max magic out of it. It's like a two bonuses for one piece. Really strong. Last, Ring of the Pale Order. Now this restores 20% of the damage you deal as health. So it's a very powerful healing tool. We do have a lot of different heals available to us, but this really amps up the healing. So I would recommend getting this mythic item. On the website, I always list up where you can get the set pieces, all listed here. And there's also a plenty of other useful sets that you can use. Like there's so many good options. If you don't have the mythic item, Pale Order, you can always use Ice Heart instead. Ice Heart is a monster set that drops in the base game, very easy to get. And this basically, every time you crit, you have a chance to get the damage shield that absorbs damage. So it's just an automated shield system, pretty much. Very powerful. Well. Now, I use 7 light armor, all divine, with max magicka. All setups here. Same here. And then we do have Bloodthirsty on the Pale Order with spell damage enchant. We have Arcane spell damage ring and the Arcane spell damage necklace. Lightning Staff of Mother Sorrow. Precise absorb magic enchant, and on the back bar I have lightning maelstrom staff infused with the weapon damage enchantment. This weapon damage enchantment is very powerful. This basically gives us a permanent 452 spell damage. With modifiers it's closer to actually 600 all the time. The reason why I say this, if you drop blockade and you swap to the front bar, you see, it will actually proc again, reapplied. So you can keep 452 spell damage up for free at all times, baby, as long as blockade is on the ground, which it always should be. Another note on sets, so Mother Sorrow. You can see on ESO-hub.com, you actually can see when it was on the golden vendor. You might want to get the neck or the ring. There has also been some discussions on the Reddit on this. As well, there is actually a quest where you can get a shock staff for a very cheap price. I made a video about that a while ago. Yeah, basically here. Can obtain a lightning Mother Sorrow staff very easy through a quest in this sham. Made this video a while ago. Yeah, here it is. So you don't need to buy it for a very expensive price in the guild stores, because Mother Sorrow is a very popular set. one more note on the Maelstrom Lightning stuff. You don't need the perfect version. The normal version is more than enough. Very easy to get. This is the general gear setup. Let's move on to the champion points. I don't want to talk about this too much. The green tree is pretty much optional. I usually like to get Steed's Blessing, so I move faster outside of combat. Rationer, so my buff food lasts longer, and Liquid Efficiency, so I actually save some potions. On the blue tree, Fighting Finesse, Raffle Strikes, Deadly Aim, and Master at Arms are my slottables. And on the red tree, Boundless Vitality, so we get more max health, Ironclad for more armor. Then I have Siphoning Spells, which increases our sustain, as well as Bastion, which increases the effectiveness of our damage shields and damage against shielded enemies. The full list on that stuff on alcasthq.com. I always also put these here, you can see what they do. And I leave a link to the champion points calculator on ESO-hub.com. The calculator is very popular. When you click on this, you actually can see what I do. It also has a name, so you can find the things very easily with all the slots. That should help you out a lot. And like I said, this here is basically the max champion points that you could get, but if you have only 600, there's also allocation for you, all split up. Now the second most important part, the skills. You can of course adjust this to your needs. However, I will explain in a second why I like this setup so much. Hardened Ward. This is a shield. When I activate this right now, it gives me almost a 15k shield. So you can pretty much say 25k health plus 15k shield, right? So you have a buttload of health that people or enemies need to get through. I can spam this as much as I want. Usually before I go to the back bar, I activate it. So I have some damage protection. Pet also actually gets the shield, which is really nice. Try to keep this up as much as possible because, well, it's really hard to get through a 15k shield, especially if you combine this with an occasional dodge roll or block. Consuming Trap. This is from the World Tree in Soul Magic. I always use this on small monsters because they die fast. And when you read the second part of the text, if an affected enemy dies, you fill an empty soul gem and heal for 5k health. You also restore 7000 Magicka and 3600. Like, this skill is just broken for solo builds. Like, one small enemy dies and you gain 7k Magicka. That's just insanity. Obviously, it also deals a little bit of damage. But yeah, we have this for resource management. Crystal Fragments. This is our spammable. Some folks might be confused, like why don't we have a real spammable? Because you can use this as a spammable. It can proc itself nowadays. And then sometimes it is instant cast. So this is really good. Or any other ability we use on the front bar can also activate the instant cast on the Crystal Frag. It deals a buttload of damage, and you see your next non-ultimate ability cast within 3 seconds costs 10% less. Casting a magic ability has a 35% chance of causing your next crystal fragments to be instant. Deals 66% more damage and costs 50% less. Very juicy ability. On top of that, let's not forget about this one here, Exploitation Passive. When you cast a dark magic ability, basically crystal fragments, you grant minor prophecy to you and your group, increasing your spell critical rating by 6%. So by activating this, we gain another 6% spell crit. Like, this thing is so powerful. Critical Surge. I like to have this on the front bar because I often forget to keep it active, and then I usually see when it runs out, so I can reactivate it fairly fast. This gives us major sorcery, so it increases our spell damage by 20%. That's a lot for 33 seconds. And even more important, while active, dealing critical damage heals you for 3366. That's also why I do like having a lot of spell crit. It procs the healing more often. Sorc abilities are just so good. Next up, we have the Scamp. You can also use the bird if you prefer. I do like the Scamp more because it deals AoE damage and it can actually stun enemies. So, command the power of Oblivion to send a Daedric familiar to fight at your side. The familiar attacks deal 1500 shock damage, so basically a light attack. And then, once summoned, you can activate the familiar special ability for 2.6k Magicka, dealing 2.3k shock damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds to enemies near him. The final pulse will stun all enemies hit for 3 seconds. So when I activate this, it pulses, and the last pulse will stun mobs around him. Very powerful once again. Shooting Star. I mostly, I use this when there is a lot of mobs together on trash packs, so I gain ultimate points, because you generate 12 ultimate points per kill. And just for having this slotted, I do gain 2% more max Magicka through Magicka control. The back bar. Unstable Wall of Storms. Like I mentioned before, it keeps our back bar enchantment active all the times. It deals a buttload of damage, and it also explodes at the end, dealing even more damage. This can also set enemies off balance. When an enemy is off balance, you regain twice the amount of resource. So every time I heavy attack, showcase this. Let me actually deplete some Magicka. Every time you heavy attack, you restore 3000 Magicka, more or less. However, if an enemy is actually off balance, you restore 6k, twice the amount. Doesn't always work because the enemy has to be concussed, and sometimes the concussion chance is like, yeah, now it's off balance, like 8% chance to drop. That can be very, very good as well. Okay. Mystic Orb, powerful damage over time in combination with the blockade, so things just die around you fairly fast. Boundless Storm, this both increases your resistance and it also deals damage, also gives you major expedition. But yeah, even more AoE damage. You can see these 3 skills alone, plus the Scamp, you have a lot of AoE damage that just keeps ticking every second. Very powerful, and then obviously your single target abilities. Next up, Elemental Drain. Reduces the enemy's resistance by almost 6k, so you will deal a lot more damage to them. And it also applies minor Magicka steal, so we gain 168 Magicka every 1 second. Now, I do place this on big monsters, because they die at the end, so we can keep minor Magicka steal active as long as possible. Because when you put this on a small monster and it dies, you don't get the effect anymore. So I always put it on big mon. Scamp again, and then the Storm Atronach at the end. I usually use this on single target, so when I'm fighting a boss, I use this ultimate. Deals a lot of damage. Some people might wonder, should I use a lightning or fire staff or fire staves on these bars? It is up to you. I do like lightning staves on this setup because the Sorc already gets, where is it, here, energize, 5% more damage from shock abilities, or shock damage. And I do like that you actually can do heavy attack on monsters, so you can regain resources a lot easier. On a sword, definitely a better option. Obviously, this is for solo setups. In group builds, you should use fire state. Single target is more important. That's this. To recap the resource management and how we get our healing. First off, resource management. False God gives a buttload of resource management. If we do heavy attacks, we also gain a lot of resource management, or like sustain, that matter. Consuming Trap gives us extra resources, and Elemental Drain also, as well as heavy attacks. There's a lot of resource management or like sustain built in. You also do have potions that give you a buttload. So it's really hard to run out of Magicka on this setup. Healing from Pale Order and from Critical Surge. Like I mentioned before, if you want a panic button, you could use the Twilight Matriarch instead of the Volatile Familiar, because the Matriarch heals for a lot if you activate. But for me, usually with the Pale Order and Critical Surge, it's more than enough. We also have Consuming Trap that occasionally goes off. I think I covered most of this. Like mentioned before, the whole setup is on alcasthq.com. Plenty of gameplay footage to go through. Want to see the build in action. You can find a lot of builds on alcasthq.com, be it solo or group, it's all here. ESO Hub, eso-hub.com is mostly for like all other information related to Elder Scrolls Online, set skills, champion points, companions. You can see what the pledges are, the endeavors, whether the servers are up. Like, we have everything here, basically. We do have a Discord bot, Dwemer Automaton, that you also can check out if you want. Or present on over 20,000 ESO Discord servers. There's a lot of really useful comments. I do have Twitter, Facebook, and all that other stuff. Links in the description. Let's actually check out the outfit real quick. Ebon Shadow hat, Ebon Shadow epaulets, gloves, breeches, jerkin, dash, shoes with Ebon Shadow stuff. Stuff, look, one of my favorite. Color, I use Void Pitch and Divine Gold. The skin is Meridian Purified. So, help. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Cheers.